Attention, John gamers! What if I told you Modern has an under-the-radar Tarmogoyf slinging mid-range deck that actually does incredibly well against the current meta? No, but really, I'm for real. Naya mid-range, a most elegant deck I've been fortunate enough to top 8 3 challenges and 3 RCQs with, is the queen of mid-range, equipped with the tools needed to outperform tier 1 decks such as Rakdos Scam and Murktide. Alright, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Fury just got banned, so I do mention it a few times in this video, as well as the deck Scam, and you're just gonna have to ignore that. Though I will say, Fury has been a problematic card for this deck, seeing as we're relying a lot on creatures, so this is actually a great thing for the list. And additionally, Up the Beanstalk being banned is great news, because 4-color was kind of one of the worst matchups for this deck to face, and now that that's gone, I think it's smooth sailing from here. So let's get back to the video. Apologies for any Fury references, but yeah, just a quick update there. So come along, friends, and today I'll show you how cards like Elvish Reclaimer and Knight of the Reliquary can make all of your dreams come true. Starting off with our creatures, at 1 mana we have a playset of Ragavan, the mind-numbingly powerful card which needs no introduction, as well as a playset of Elvish Reclaimer, perhaps the most underrated card in all of Modern. Not only are we on 10 fetch lands to consistently make Reclaimer a big, beefy boy, but we also have some clutch utility lands that I'll discuss in more detail when we get to the land section. At 2 mana, we have a playset of Tarmogoyf, a 7/8 chonker that has stolen the hearts of Boomer Magic players all throughout the land. Since our deck consists of creatures, lands, artifacts, enchantments, instants, sorceries, and planeswalkers, Goyf can often contest Modern's biggest threats, cards like Murktide, Fury, Rhinos, and Primeval Titan. Last but certainly not least, we have Knight of the Reliquary, the greatest Magic the Gathering card of all time. Where Tarmogoyf can block medium-sized creatures, Knights can block creatures equipped with Colossus Hammer and Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. Seriously, a Knight unchecked will quickly become bigger than 10/10, while also offering outrageous amounts of value by finding us Urza Sagas every single turn, similarly to that of Elvish Reclaimer. So now that we're feeling solid with our army of massive monsters, we'll also need some defensive measures to ensure that our fair game plan can keep up with the most degenerate decks Modern has ever seen. We're running 4 copies of both Prismatic Ending and Leyline Binding, exile effects that take care of any non-land permanents that could cause us trouble from Ragavan to Ulamog. Indestructible and Graveyard Recursion be damned. There's almost no threat that Naya midrange doesn't have a plan for. And for the non-permanent and permanent threats alike, we also have Reprieve, a phenomenally positioned card in the current meta that not only slows down decks with more expensive cards, but also thwarts cards like Murktide Regent, Living In, and Crashing Footfalls. Okay, so up to this point, we're totally the good guys doing fair things with underrated cards. Well, let's just be a little bit evil and throw a few copies of my precious, the One Ring, in so we never run out of resources. And because I'm a little bit addicted. Alright, those are most of the deck's non-lands, and we haven't even gotten to the strongest card in the deck. It's Urza's Saga. It feels almost impossible to lose in the late game when you're pumping out 1 or 2 constructs every turn and then searching for one of several utility artifacts afterwards. The most notable of which has to be Shadow Spear, a quite frankly oppressive card when it's attached to any of our threats, especially Knight of the Reliquary. The life gain is so clutch in terms of neutralizing the One Ring's damage, something another Saga target is good at as well, Haywire Might. This little insect laughs in the face of opposing Urza's Sagas, Leyline Bindings, Blood Moons, and the One Rings on either side of the battlefield. Somebody should have told the Fellowship of the Ring that there's a much easier way to stop Sauron. Our next Saga target is Mishra's Bauble, a solid cantrip effect that works well with Tarmogoyf, and our 10 fetch lands for a little card selection. Finally, Expedition Map is a great way to turn 2 constructs from a saga into 4 plus another 1 mana artifact. Looping Saga in this deck is pretty good. The map also searches for some of our utility lands, so let's finally jump into what those are now. Bojuka Bog is a great way to host Living In, Murktide, and any other graveyard decks. And don't forget, we can get it with Reclaimer, Knight, and Map. Viseju is another great map target that deals with a wide variety of decks like Tron, Amulet, and Hammer Time. And you can loop it with another busted card I haven't even mentioned yet, Renin 6, which also can loop Urza's Saga, and technically Bojuka Bog if Elvish Reclaimer is in play. Lastly, there's Selesnya Sanctuary, which is really good at picking up a Bojuka Bog that's already been played so you can play it again, but also if you have Elvish Reclaimer on turn 1, and on turn 2 you notice that you only have 2 lands to play without a third, you can use the Elvish Reclaimer to get your Selesnya Sanctuary, and then basically ensure you'll have a third land drop, so there is some added utility there. I will say I have considered going with 11 fetch lands and not having the Selesnya Sanctuary. It's kind of my one flex spot right now, but it does do a lot of important things. There are 2 more cards worth noting in our main board. The first of which, Zagoth Triome, isn't really a utility land. It's more a land just used to get the swamp and island types that will allow us to use Leyline Binding for 1 mana. So a common play pattern is going to be like turn 1 Sacred Foundry into Ragavan, and then turn 2 play a fetch land so that you can represent your Zagoth Triome alongside the Sacred Foundry and cast Leyline Binding for 1 mana. The other notable card is Utopia Sprawl. This is just a great way to ramp and get to cards like Knight of the Reliquary on turn 2, or the One Ring on turn 3, and it doesn't require you to put a creature on the board that would just easily get taken out. And I guess lastly, it's also an enchantment, so that can come up for Tarmogoyf. Moving on to the sideboard, most notably we have Gigantha, which is just a free 8 mana 5/5. We don't have double mana pips in our main board, so bad design, but we'll take it. Additionally, we have 1 extra copy of some cards in our main board. We have 1 Viseju, 1 Haywire Might, and 1 Reprieve. We also have some more removal in the sideboard. There are 2 copies of Force of Vigor, which, yeah, it makes us take out the Gigantha, but it's free, and you can just take out Urza Sagas, all kinds of artifacts, enchantments. You can even use Shadow Spear to make the One Ring not indestructible anymore and destroy that, so kind of nuts. Additionally, 2 March of Otherworldly Light are doing similar things, exiling Urza Saga, taking out generally cheap threats, and sometimes even, like a Yawgmoth, because you have the white cards to pitch in your hand, can be really effective. We also have some protection spells. We have 2 Veil of Summer, super solid against blue and black, just being able to prevent counters, prevent removal, always been good. Everyone knows Veil is really solid, but maybe even better than Veil, 2 Surge of Salvation in our sideboard. It's just incredible against any deck that is trying to interact with you. They can't target you when you have Surge, they can't target your permanents. It does everything. I love this card. Also, we have 1 Tormod's Crypt. It's just a great flex slot to switch out one of our artifacts to tutor with Urza Saga in the event that we need to address a graveyard deck, address any kind of shenanigans in the graveyard. But the last 2 copies of cards in our sideboard are Weathered Wayfarer. And this is not a card that has seen a lot of attention. Maybe people don't even know that it exists, but it's very, very powerful. It doesn't really matter what you're playing. If you are on the draw, you put this in because you can turn to find Bojuka Bog, you can turn to find Viseju, you can turn to find Urza Saga. It gets whatever you need and is extremely effective, especially when you're replacing Ragavans that don't do as much when you're on the draw anyway. So that's my deck. And I've been considering for quite a while what I should name the deck. Initially I thought about something like White Jund, but that doesn't really sound right. I also considered Pure Jund, but that sounds even sketchier. A lot of my friends like to call the deck Naya Lands, and that kind of fits, but probably the most appropriate name for the deck is just Naya Midrange. I'll be sure to put the link in the description for the deck, and I would also love to see in the comments anything you guys think could be improved to make it even better. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And until next time, peace out, friends.